The first task for her is to replace Mayfair's pen. At home, Jane examines it but finds nothing suspicious. The next morning, a random driver notices a strange man with a paratrooper tattoo walking along the road and offers him a ride to the military base. There, the man seizes a guard's weapon and shoots the security personnel. The case reaches the FBI. Patterson finds records on Sergeant Charlie Napier, whose name is tattooed on Jane's body, though he was officially declared dead a year and a half ago. DNA confirms it is indeed Charlie. In the same battle, 4 other soldiers were killed, but their bodies were also never found. At this point, news arrives that Charlie called his mother's old phone number. The team goes there, and Jane manages to talk Charlie into surrendering. However, Jane suddenly recalls her military past. During the interrogation, Charlie admits he remembers only a cave, fire, and the tortures of a demon. He escaped by swimming across the river Styx. Charlie's body contains a substance that erases memory, the same as found in Jane, but his body overcame it, turning him into a super soldier. His mother is brought to him, and she is overwhelmed, embracing her long-lost son. Watching this, Kurt confesses to Jane that he could never forgive his father for mistreating their family. Unexpectedly, military police arrive for Charlie, and the FBI has to hand him over. However, Patterson manages to uncover the name of a contractor whose mine supposedly killed all 5 missing soldiers, North Lake Corporation. Meanwhile, the vehicle transporting Charlie is ambushed on the road. Masked assailants kill the escorts and forcibly take the sergeant away. The FBI identifies several locations where Charlie might have been held, based on his descriptions. At the same time, Northlake's secret lab begins destroying evidence of their super soldier experiments. The missing soldiers are found there, and Charlie is brought in as well. The FBI starts a search, triggering more of Jane's military memories. Soon, the agents discover the 4 deceased soldiers. Charlie is not among them. Patterson restores part of a video proving the experiments were illegal. It appears they worked only on Charlie. At that moment, Charlie undergoes the final stage of an experiment meant to produce the ultimate serum. The FBI arrives just in time. Despite a firefight with the guards, Jane and Kurt manage to arrest the scientists. Charlie escapes, and when Jane catches up to him in the yard, they engage in a fight. To save his partner, Kurt kills Charlie. Jane then recalls a conversation with an unknown person congratulating her on joining the Orion program. Later, she swaps Mayfair's pen. That evening, Kurt's father confesses that on the night Taylor disappeared, he tried to drown himself in the river due to depression. At the same time, Jane gives Mayfair's pen to Oscar, who explains that Orion is the place where she died. He says he cannot reveal more for now. Meanwhile, Olivia, accused by the FBI of espionage, is killed by her lawyer when she agrees to name her contact. Mayfair is informed that a mole is in her office and everyone will undergo screening. She orders Kurt to investigate discreetly. Agent Sloan from FBI counterintelligence steps in to help, leveraging her contacts at the Russian embassy. However, Fisher's people block the office, determined to prove Mayfair's incompetence. Agents are interrogated with polygraphs. Kurt goes first. Later, Sloan promises to contact an agent from the Russian embassy, but is not allowed to leave the office. Meanwhile, other agents take their turns on the polygraph. Although Fisher finds no suspicious answers, many experience tense moments. After the procedure, Fisher declares the traitor is in the office. Sloan is forced to confess to Kurt and Reed that her source is Roman, a driver for the embassy. At this time, Fisher brings up the Guerrero case, who died right before his meeting with Mayfair, pointing to a potential leak. However, Mayfair is confident her team is clean. Tasha is shown a bug found in her apartment. She is forced to confess that Carter wanted to obtain information about Jane. Meanwhile, Kurt seeks help from Police Marshal Amy, who secretly brings Roman to the office. Fisher, in the meantime, discovers that Jane's security detail was removed after Carter's disappearance. Kurt's nephew saw them kissing near his house, even though others claim Jane was supposed to be home. Kurt reluctantly admits he doesn't know where she went afterward. Fisher accuses Jane, believing that as a child she was sent to Russia and trained as an agent. Carter proved this, but was killed, and Olivia also wanted to reveal her name. At the same time, Roman, while reviewing FBI personnel photos, identifies Jane, claiming he saw her with an embassy employee. Jane is arrested, though Kurt believes in her innocence and accuses Sloan of manipulation. He confronts Roman, who, under pressure, admits that Fisher ordered him to identify Jane. Kurt uncovers the mole. Jane is transported to the CIA. On the way to her cell, Kurt's team catches up with the convoy. The agent accuses Fisher of treason. Hearing this, Jane overpowers the guards, seizes one of their guns, and chases Fisher, who tries to escape. Realizing he won't get away, Fisher reaches for his weapon, but is shot and killed by Jane. Later, Kurt reports that Sloan and Fisher's other accomplices will face espionage charges. Jane is now free. That evening, Tasha notices signs of a search in her apartment and audibly invites the Watchers to meet her. The next morning, she meets with Assistant Federal Prosecutor Matthew Waits, who confesses that his main focus is solving Carter's disappearance and uncovering Jane's identity. Meanwhile, Patterson uncovers 2 more tattoos, a lion and a bull forming 2 vertices of an angle. The coordinates for these tattoos trace back to the North Pole. It appears the people who tattooed Jane were behind this. Patterson identifies a 3rd vertex, and the FBI heads there, only to disrupt a police operation targeting drug traffickers. Kurt notices a drawing on the wall dedicated to a singer, Paloma Diaz, who died 7 years ago. The same tattoo is on Jane's body. It turns out the clues lead to Paloma's case. Her boyfriend, Ronnie Vargas, accused of her murder, is set to be executed tomorrow night. Paloma disappeared on her way to Mexico, and her body, bearing signs of violence, was later found washed ashore. Vargas denies involvement but was deemed guilty. The FBI takes on the investigation. Unexpectedly, Vargas confesses to the crime and refuses to fight for his life. Meanwhile, Jane learns about a new clue and recalls a mission from Oscar, which she had refused. Reed shares that Vargas initially searched for Paloma after her disappearance and was initially believed. However, 2 weeks later, after his family's home burned down, he suddenly confessed to the murder. A witness, Highway Patrolman Timothy Ivers, initially supported Vargas but later withdrew his statement. The FBI visits Ivers. Off the record, he admits that his boss, Sten, ordered him to stay silent when he started tracing Paloma's route. She boarded the correct bus but vanished along the way. Meanwhile, Patterson finds an error in Paloma's birth date on her ticket. Similar typos appear in the records of other missing girls. It seems Sten marked them this way, placing them on buses from which they later disappeared. The driver was always the same person. However, they likely weren't the masterminds. Patterson identifies another girl whose information was altered. She is scheduled to travel today. Tasha volunteers to take her place. She is given a pendant with a tracker whose signal will be monitored continuously. Tasha boards the bus, which soon makes an unscheduled stop. The women head to the restroom, where the driver knocks Tasha out, removes her jewelry, and hands her over to others. The agents see the women returning to the bus, and although Tasha is not visible, the signal continues to come from the bus. They follow it calmly, unaware that Tasha has been thrown into a van. Half an hour later, Reed begins to worry. They overtake the bus and see that Tasha is not inside. Meanwhile, Tasha regains consciousness in a basement and realizes her pendant is gone. The agents find footage of Tasha's abduction and identify a woman who had also disappeared 7 years ago, apparently transitioning from victim to accomplice. Patterson tracks her card, which was used to buy gas. Tasha discovers she's in an underground establishment where girls are brought and later sold by the owner, Mr. Tate, to his clients, who can do whatever they want with them, even kill. At the same time, Jane notices a card under the windshield of a van, resembling a key card. Patterson identifies a townhouse with similar gates. In the basement, Tasha defends a fellow captive. Tate, noticing her fake identity documents, orders the party to end and the house to be burned down with everyone inside. But by then, the feds have already blocked all escape routes. Breaking a window, Tasha organizes the evacuation while Kurt and Reed engage in a shootout with the guards. Tate takes an assistant hostage but is shot by an agent. Kurt and Reed then enter the burning house and rescue Tasha at the last moment. Tate's assistant reveals details about Paloma's death. Tate and many of his high-profile clients are charged, and Vargas's execution is canceled. Tasha reminds Jane that these women were saved only because of her tattoos. Meanwhile, Reed reviews footage from the night of Carter's disappearance and finds his car, but the driver's identity remains unclear. He sends Mayfair a message and steps outside, only to be struck hard on the head. Oscar confesses to Jane that he sent the note pointing to her tattoos and reminds her of her own directive, to kill Kurt if he refuses to cooperate. Later, Reed receives a warning. If he doesn't stop investigating Carter's disappearance, his loved ones will die. That night, a painting of a flaming rose, created by the mysterious artist Zoma and identical to one of Jane's tattoos, is stolen from the Gallery of Modern Art. The FBI heads to the gallery and meets Zoma's assistant, Christy. She explains she has worked with the artist for 7 years but has never seen him. Zoma meets no one and communicates only through postcards. While the agents talk to Christy, Jane secretly plants a bug in the FBI vehicle on Oscar's orders. Kurt notices that a central statue in the room where the theft occurred has been moved and discovers a bomb. The agents manage to flee, but Kurt is seriously injured in the explosion. The agents suspect the artist and decide to use his self-portrait to find him. The painting lacks a face but shows a view from a window. Patterson identifies a matching location. When Jane peers through the peephole of the identified building and sees a bound person, she breaks in, only to be shot by a sniper from a neighboring building. Her bulletproof vest saves her. However, the sniper escapes by disguising himself as an FBI agent. Jane encounters him on the street and recognizes him as a former member of her team. They exchange gunfire before both disappear. Kurt theorizes that Jane fled to draw the killer away from the FBI. At the same time, the agents learn of Christie's attempt to flee the country. Jane meets Oscar, who suggests that one of their group's founders, Cade, is hunting her as revenge for being excluded. It seems he was the one who shot at her earlier. Meanwhile, Christie confesses that she is Zoma and was blackmailed into painting the flaming rose. After her assistant was killed, she panicked and tried to run. Oscar takes Jane to another former team member. However, when he opens his garage doors, gunfire erupts. Jane fires back, but Cade escapes, and Oscar's friend is killed. The FBI analyzes the wire found on the murdered man's hands and concludes the killer is aboard a ship. They storm the vessel, but an alarm allows the man to escape and trap the team. Oscar's people also locate Cade, and Jane heads there. Meanwhile, her teammates fill the hollow door with gas and watch as a woman falls into Cade's trap. The team blows the door open while Jane fights the sniper. Oscar shoots him, and they both fall into the water. However, the Coast Guard fails to find Cade's body. Jane, on the other hand, finds Oscar alive at their usual meeting spot. Later, it turns out that the sniper also survived. The next day, Patterson receives a call confirming a dinner reservation David had booked for their first anniversary. At the FBI, a report arrives about a robbery. The driver and guard of an armored truck were killed, and the cargo was stolen. The logo of the transport company matches one of Jane's tattoos. The agents head to the scene, where Kurt finds an antidote for gas poisoning on the guard's body, indicating the use of chemical weapons. It's discovered that a U.S. chemical weapons disposal facility is located nearby. The visas for the deceased Korean guards were arranged by Vanessa Chang, the president of an import-export company. The FBI interrogates the general in charge of the sarin stockpile, who denies any theft, even though one truckload of sarin could destroy an entire state. Later, Patterson identifies another accomplice of the Koreans. The team heads to his address and encounters him as he's leaving. Spotting the FBI, he takes a hostage, opens fire, and is killed. Kurt answers a call on the man's phone, and everyone hears the general's voice. Patterson, analyzing the operations of his warehouse, finds discrepancies in the amount of sarin received and destroyed. A connection is uncovered to a foundation that purchased a building near the storage facility. The team heads there. However, instead of a building, they find a pond according to the map. The agents discover a hatch leading underground, where they find the fugitive general in a booby-trapped room filled with containers of poisonous gas. The general claims he refused to destroy the weapons his country needed to maintain its power. He sold a small portion to South Korea to pay the warehouse staff. However, someone learned about this and orchestrated the robbery. The agents manage to disarm the general, who provides evidence against Vanessa Chang. The team goes to the port, where they face resistance and neutralize the dock workers. Vanessa is also present and shoots one of the gas barrels, causing a leak. Kurt injects Jane with his own antidote after hers is shattered. She notices Vanessa also has an antidote, wounds her, and takes it to save Kurt. Once revived, Vanessa admits that 4 containers are missing and confesses to working for North Korea. She was unaware the terrorists planned an attack in America. At the scene, the agents find empty vacuum cleaners, realizing they were used to transport the sarin. Patterson investigates the cleaning company's logo found on the vacuum cleaners and identifies their work location for a major event that day. The FBI heads there. Soon they spot 2 cleaners with the familiar vacuum cleaners. Jane leaps from above and disables one, while Kurt captures the other. That evening, Patterson goes to the restaurant with David's final crossword puzzle. Talking to his ghost, she solves the crossword. Meanwhile, Jane meets with Oscar, who urges her to get closer to Kurt. She refuses, prompting Oscar to confess his love for her. At the same time, Patterson receives a hidden message from David, revealing that he solved another of Jane's tattoos. The waiter brings a dessert David had ordered in advance, adorned with a toy lamb. Patterson realizes it's a clue. She goes to David's former apartment and risks climbing the fire escape to enter, only to find that his belongings have already been removed. David's ghost reminds her of the lamb, and she recalls preparing it in a fireplace during a game. There, she discovers a key belonging to Carson's watch company. Meanwhile, Tasha meets with Waits, who accuses Mayfair of involvement in Guerrero's murder, pointing out she was at the prison that day. Carter's car was found near a bridge. Mayfair's former partner, Sophia, also voluntarily left her life by driving her car off a bridge. Everyone close to Mayfair seems to die. Tasha, however, refuses to believe it. Patterson goes to the watch company, where she's shown a figurine of an antique arcade machine. Using the key, she winds it, and the machine stabs with a knife, leaving marks that, when illuminated, reveal a projection of the Andromeda constellation. By aligning it with Jane's body, Patterson identifies the location of one of the tattoos. Meanwhile, Reed receives a phone order to destroy the file with the photo of Carter's car before Mayfair sees it. At the same time, Patterson identifies the star marked on Jane's body as Aldebaran and visits an antique shop with the same name. She struggles to understand why David sent her there, but agrees to have tea with the shop's owner, Mark. Reed deletes the file with the mysterious car. Patterson tells Mark about the game she and David played. Then, unexpectedly, he attacks her. Patterson wakes up in a basement where Mark insists he knows the FBI is watching him. Patterson cannot convince him otherwise and realizes he's unhinged. The team learns about her disappearance and follows her trail. In the basement, David's ghost advises Patterson to focus, and she manages to free her hands. Meanwhile, the agents find her car parked near the shop and rush there. Through the shop window, Kurt spots Patterson's coat on a chair. The agents search the premises. Patterson escapes to the outdoors, stunned to find herself in the middle of a snowy forest, undressed and barefoot. She discovers a garage and tries to open its doors. Meanwhile, fingerprints in the shop reveal that Mark is a teacher involved in a scandal with a murdered student. At the time, top lawyers paid by his brother, a senator, got him acquitted. The brothers are now arguing in a remote house. The senator is frustrated that his brother has broken the law again, but reluctantly allows him to kill one last time. They spot Patterson running into the woods and give chase. The FBI finds information on the senator, realizing he's been protecting a serial killer. The killer catches up to Patterson, but she fights him off and runs again. The agents head to the address of the remote house. Patterson is nearly frozen, but finds comfort in David's ghost. The FBI arrives at the house and follows the tracks into the forest. When Patterson calls out, Kurt encounters the senator and disarms him, though the senator attacks him. Jane hears Patterson's voice and hurries to her. She sees the abductor preparing to shoot and kills him with a stick. Patterson is warmed up and comforted. Later, the FBI uncovers evidence of multiple murders covered up by the high-ranking official. Afterward, Reed confides in Mayfair about the threats he's received. Mayfair admits she also suspects Jane and shows him the preserved photo of the car. However, it's impossible to identify anyone from it. She wonders what the purpose of it all is. That evening, Oscar asks Jane to pretend she remembers her childhood and gives her photos of Kurt and Taylor as children. Meanwhile, Patterson bids farewell to David, leaving the toy lamb on a fence near his house. The next day, despite her earlier doubts, Mayfair visits a trusted expert and asks him to try to identify the man in the photo. Later, the FBI learns about an offer from .com to help them capture a criminal, Sho Akhtar, a banker for numerous terrorist organizations, in exchange for leniency in his prison conditions. The agents go to the prison. .com's plan is to leak the location of 12 stolen masterpieces previously taken from a museum. Sho, a lover of stolen art, won't be able to resist. The paintings are stored at the home of a professor who participated in the heist. The professor's house is highly secure with measures he personally designed. .com knows all the security details because he's been planning to steal the stolen art for years. The FBI can't simply arrest the professor, as he constantly wears a button around his neck that can instantly incinerate the gallery. The agents agree to the plan. They stage a malfunction in the professor's gas system. Reed, posing as a gas technician, enters the house and copies data from the professor's smartwatch, which contains the code to the door lock. Additionally, .com manages to create an exact copy of the professor's palm print, but only he can wear it. The agents have to bring all the equipment from .com's stash to the office. The FBI heads to the professor's house. They easily disable the door code and unlock the second lock, but suddenly an iris scanner is activated. Patterson suggests cutting off power to the entire house. The professor will think it's a power outage and, of course, will head home, giving them some time. That's exactly what happens. .com disconnects the wires from the booby-trap paintings just as Patterson warns that the professor is approaching. He bursts into the gallery and attacks Jane with a saber, but she quickly rips the medallion with the detonator off his neck. The professor fights until the explosive device on the last painting goes off, killing him and damaging the painting. Now all the agents can do is wait for Sho to call. However, before that, they need to repair the painting. .com reveals the name of a top-tier restorer, wanted for forging masterpieces. The restorer begins his work. Later, Sho contacts .com, requesting to see one of the paintings first. The FBI discovers the address where .com is supposed to meet Sho, who will give a signal upon identifying him. Jane accompanies .com. When they enter the building, a man dancing in the middle of the room suddenly starts firing pistols. Then he runs over to embrace the stunned .com, calling him a friend. Sho examines the painting brought as evidence, but then suddenly points a gun at .com's mouth, declaring the painting a fake. The FBI prepares to storm the building, but Tasha notices 4 men in an elevator. Jane asks Sho to recheck the painting, but at that moment, the FBI and the 4 men burst into the room and a firefight ensues. Sho escapes to the roof with Jane and .com in pursuit. He ambushes them and injures .com, but his luck runs out as he runs out of bullets. Jane engages him in hand-to-hand combat. Meanwhile, the FBI realizes they're battling Pakistani intelligence. On the roof, Jane knocks Sho out and sees .com standing on the edge. She pleads with him to step back, but he jumps off and deploys a parachute. It turns out the entire operation was .com's plan to escape custody. The paintings were swapped by his accomplice, the restorer. The parachute was built into his tuxedo, something the FBI agents didn't anticipate. And Sho wasn't Sho after all. Meanwhile, Jane meets Kurt's father and begins following Oscar's plan, pretending to remember events from her childhood. Mayfair learns that her friend Sophia, believed to be dead, is actually alive. Sophia contacts her for help, revealing that someone who knows about the Daylight program tracked her down in Paraguay. Learning about Carter's disappearance makes her panic even more, and she begs Mayfair to flee with her. Simultaneously, Tasha deciphers another of Jane's tattoos, which points to the results of football games played by a local university team. This leads to the office of a committee investigating scholarship fraud. However, the committee chair assures them everything is fine, leaving the FBI uncertain why this case was flagged. Nevertheless, the agents head to the university. The first person they meet is Reed's former coach, whom he respects and admires. Their conversation is interrupted by University President Karen. As the agents prepare to leave, communication is suddenly blocked and gunfire erupts inside the building. The team rushes into the building, splitting up to track the shooter. Tasha manages to save the coach who, though wounded, survives. He didn't see the shooter's face and claims not to know him. She escorts him through a lecture hall, but they are followed by a man with a shotgun. Tasha gets into a firefight but quickly runs out of ammo. Meanwhile, Kurt and Jane head to the second floor, where they split up. Jane is stopped by a local security guard, but disarms him herself. In the end, the guard believes she's with the FBI and becomes her temporary partner. In the cafeteria, they find Karen injured. Jane has to cauterize her wound to stop the bleeding. Jane follows the sound of gunfire and wounds Tasha's attacker. However, a distant explosion rumbles, and the shooter promises something terrible is about to happen. The agents rush through the building, trying to figure out what surprises still await them. In one of the classrooms, they find a professor who identifies the attacker as a former student, Levi Hart. He says Levi headed toward the defender's room. Kurt runs there and sees a bag of explosives tied to the glass doors. Climbing outside the building, Kurt scales the wall to the room's window. He helps the trapped students escape, but as he steps into the hallway, he encounters Levi. Kurt tries to convince him to drop the gun, but Levi is determined to see his plan through. An explosion does occur, but neither Kurt nor Levi is injured, and the young man escapes. Meanwhile, the FBI arrests Tasha's attacker, who was found with a signal jammer in his pocket. However, the primary instigator is still missing. The agents continue their search. Soon, Reed discovers another set of booby-trap doors. Though he manages to replace the pin in an armed grenade, the explosion still goes off. Reed regains consciousness to find Levi pointing a gun at the back of his head. Reed tries to reason with him, mentioning that he also used to play football here. Levi demands to be taken to the coach. The agents overhear their conversation and deduce where Reed is leading him. Along the way, Levi confesses that the coach's inappropriate behavior toward boys had pushed him over the edge. As a child, Levi was a victim, but when he grew up, the coach secured scholarships for him and others to keep them silent. However, upon realizing there were more victims, Levi snapped, knowing no one believed them. Reed promises to investigate the claims and ensure the coach is imprisoned for life if they are true. As they exit the building, Levi is shot and killed by Kurt. Later, Reed promises the coach that justice will come for all the lives he has ruined. The FBI realizes that scholarships were being used as a tool for corruption. Meanwhile, Mayfair gives Sophia money to help her disappear from her pursuers, but refuses to flee with her. Oscar, on the other hand, urges his assistant to take action and reveals a bag containing Carter's body. The next day, Oscar gives Jane a flash drive and orders her to insert it into any department computer. The program will automatically copy the necessary files. Dr. Borden is informed of a new patient, a nonverbal autistic girl who creates highly detailed sketches, one of which matches a tattoo on Jane's body. Patterson identifies it as the symbol of Tariq Ahmadi's terrorist organization. 3 members of the group recently entered the U.S. with fake documents. The girl might know something about an impending attack, but communicating with her proves difficult. The agents try to engage the child, who suddenly shows a drawing of Tariq Ahmadi, calling him Daddy. Russell Franklin, the Assistant Secretary of State for the Middle East, joins the investigation. DNA analysis confirms the girl, Maya, is indeed Ahmadi's daughter. However, her mother's whereabouts remain unknown. Jane takes charge and shows Maya her tattoos in her sketchbook. Maya allows Jane to look at her drawings. Among them, the FBI identifies an American journalist specializing in articles about terrorists. The journalist denies recognizing Maya. Maya continues to draw, leading the agents to a Thai restaurant. Surveying the area, Jane notices a broken window. The agents investigate and find the mutilated body of a young woman, identified as Maya's mother, Narman. It seems Narman knew about Ahmadi's plans and intended to expose them. This means Maya might now be a target. The journalist is informed of Narman's death and admits he helped her escape from her husband due to his treatment of their ailing daughter. Now he agrees to act as bait to catch the killers. Kurt dons the journalist's clothes and they head to his home, where Ahmadi's militants attack. The agents neutralize the assailants but decide to hide Maya for her safety. They take her to Dr. Borden's cottage. On the way, Kurt reminisces about childhood adventures and admits that, before Taylor's disappearance, his father was his hero. Somehow, the militants discover Maya's location and head there as well. At the cottage, Dr. Borden shows where everything is located, while back at the office, Tasha translates a phone conversation between Maya's grandmother and an interpreter. The grandmother reveals that Maya's mother was killed because of her daughter's drawings, which depict all of Ahmadi's key associates. Maya is the real target. Meanwhile, Jane and Kurt decide to go to the nearest store for groceries, but receive a call from Reed and turn back. At the cottage, the power suddenly goes out, which seems suspicious. Realizing this might signal an attack, Patterson arms herself and asks Borden to grab some tools and barricade the doors. Suddenly, Patterson sees Maya outside, just as vehicles with militants arrive. Patterson opens fire while Borden carries Maya to safety, later joining Patterson to fend off the attackers. At the last moment, Kurt and Jane arrive. A shootout ensues, culminating in the militants blowing up the house. The FBI emerges victorious. Later, Franklin arrives and announces his intent to take Maya, but Kurt notices a drawing of Franklin's hand with a distinctive ring and realizes he is behind the attack. The diplomat tries to grab the girl, but Maya pushes him, and he is wounded and arrested. It is revealed that Franklin funded the terrorist group and sent the militants to prevent Maya from identifying him. The FBI spreads the news of Maya's death to protect her, and she is taken in by her grandmother. That evening, Tasha confides in Reed about her suspicions regarding Mayfair. Jane uses Oscar's flash drive to steal data from the FBI. Mayfair meets with Alexandra, but while she steps out for ice, Alexandra is killed. An anonymous caller demands Mayfair stop investigating Carter's death. The next day, Deputy Attorney General Waits arrives at the FBI office and informs Mayfair that he will lead the investigation into Alexandra's murder. The team is confused, but vows to support their boss. Later that day, Kurt's sister and their lawyer arrive to sign inheritance papers concerning their dying father. After the procedure, Reed escorts the women to the elevator. Suddenly, a building-wide alert announces a system lockdown. The agents find themselves trapped in different rooms and areas. Patterson realizes the FBI has been hacked. Jane navigates through the ventilation ducts to reach the doctor's office. Patterson soon joins her and picks the lock using a police badge, freeing the agents. Patterson quickly determines that someone has taken control of the building system, but she can only monitor the situation. It becomes clear that the hackers are downloading files on all undercover FBI agents. If these files are leaked, it will cause a massive scandal. Meanwhile, two hackers, a man and a woman, discuss their actions. The woman expresses fear, realizing the scale of their crime, but the man insists the data is worth a fortune and assures her their plan will succeed. Patterson suggests cutting the telecommunications cables and gives Jane and Kurt old radios that operate on independent frequencies. However, reaching the necessary room won't be easy. To bypass the lock system, Patterson plans to trick it into detecting a false emergency. The agents prepare to light a small fire, knowing the system will temporarily open the doors for evacuation when it detects smoke. Timing will be critical. The plan works. Jane and Kurt race to the designated area and sever the communications cables. However, the download continues, indicating the hackers are inside the building. The agents discover the criminals are operating from the main server room. Realizing they've been detected, the hackers activate the CO2 fire suppression system, flooding the room with the gas. Following Patterson's guidance, Kurt and Jane escape the room. Before heading to the server room, they need weapons, which are stored in the armory. The pair climbs to the next floor via the ventilation system. Meanwhile, Tasha, locked in a room with Mayfair, confesses that Waits tried to recruit her by revealing alleged corruption involving her boss. The agents arm themselves, break the lock on the door, free Tasha and Mayfair, and head to the server room, where they open fire on the hackers. The woman is killed, but the man manages to escape. It turns out the woman worked as a janitor in the building, which explains her knowledge of the layout. The man is also revealed to be a member of the cleaning staff. Suddenly, the man's voice comes over the intercom, threatening to drop all the elevators in the building, which are currently filled with people. Kurt is horrified to realize that his sister, Reed, and the lawyer are in one of the elevators. The cabins begin ascending to the top floor. While Patterson and the others try to devise a solution, Kurt and Jane race to the 70th floor. Meanwhile, Reed opens the ceiling hatch of the elevator and urges Sarah to climb out. Kurt and Jane arrive just in time to assist. Following Patterson's guidance, Tasha and Mayfair track the hacker's location. Kurt uses a fire hose to pull the lawyer to safety, followed by Sarah. The hacker, realizing his partner is dead, raises his weapon but is shot by the agents. Tasha attempts to stop the countdown, but the elevators fall, leaving Reed hanging precariously by the fire hose. He is rescued just in time. As the team begins to recover, Waits and his team arrive at the office, announcing Mayfair's arrest for the murder of Alexandra, who turns out to have been an FBI internal affairs officer. Waits accuses Mayfair of years of illegal activities with Carter. He claims that when she realized the truth was about to surface, she killed both Carter and Alexandra. He also asserts that Mayfair blackmailed Alexandra into helping cover up her crimes by paying her off. Waits reveals that all documents related to these cases have been erased from the FBI servers. Jane realizes that this was the work of Oscar's flash drive. Additional evidence emerges, including vehicle movement records. Jane remembers the tracker she placed on the FBI vehicle, which helped the CIA locate Carter's grave. In Carter's pocket, they found a note listing Guerrero's suspected killers, written with Mayfair's pen, identifiable by its unique ballpoint ink. Jane recalls switching the pen and realizes that all the tasks Oscar assigned her were part of a larger conspiracy. Waits further incriminates Mayfair by revealing that the money she gave to Sophia was found in Alexandra's apartment, suggesting that Sophia was also part of the setup. Jane confronts Oscar, accusing him of using her. He tries to convince her that Mayfair was involved in criminal activities. Unexpectedly, Sophia joins them, and Jane remembers their first meeting, where she had asked Sophia for help in taking down members of the Daylight Group. 2 weeks later, a child with a tattoo on their arm is found on the street. On the same day, Kurt and Jane visit his father in the hospital. The man asks Jane to share a childhood story, but she is saved by Kurt receiving a call. Meanwhile, Tasha shares her information with Reed. Kurt visits Mayfair, who is under house arrest, and asks her to tell him about Daylight. She remains silent. Later, Mayfair's superior, Director Pellington, officially shuts down the Jane Doe project. Mayfair begins her investigation to uncover who set her up. She deduces that Sophia and Alexandra were working together. She recalls a man who was with Alexandra at the bar when they first met. Mayfair manages to remove her ankle monitor and escape house arrest. Meanwhile, Kurt proposes that the team secretly investigate the case of the tattooed child, as he feels a connection between the child and Jane. The investigation leads to a nurse who abandoned the baby on the street. The team tracks him to a park where he is supposed to meet his sister, a lawyer. Patterson analyzes the baby's DNA and discovers a familial link to a high-ranking politician, Bryce Warren. However, when the nurse arrives at the park and the FBI moves in to apprehend him, a shot from a nearby building kills the man. The agents head to Warren's residence. When informed about the child, Warren insists that their son is safely at home. Meanwhile, Mayfair tracks down Alexandra's companion, who confesses to working for her and admits to seeing Sophia with Alexandra multiple times. Warren and his wife show the FBI their sick child. Later, the director reprimands the team, reminding them that the tattoo project has been officially shut down. Patterson conducts additional analysis and discovers that the biological mother of the child is Warren's wife. But if this is their child, why didn't they report his disappearance, especially with their older son nearing death? Meanwhile, Jane visits child services and, despite her efforts to prevent it, witnesses an unknown woman killing the guards and abducting the Warren baby. At the same time, Mayfair, through a tobacco shop, finds Sophia's current number. Kurt's team tries to make sense of the situation when Warren's wife arrives. Mayfair asks Reed for help tracking the number, and Tasha joins him. Warren's wife explains that she and her husband avoided having a second child due to fears of another hereditary illness. However, they participated in genetic research and submitted samples to the Center for Genetics. Simultaneously, Jane interrogates a captured guard and learns the address where the woman took the Warren baby. Tasha informs Mayfair of Sophia's phone location. Jane infiltrates the center, but discovers an overwhelming number of children. Suddenly, gunfire erupts outside. It's the FBI agents, whom the guards are trying to keep out. The kidnapper and her boss attempt to move the children, but Jane confronts them. Kurt finds her unconscious on the floor and revives her while his colleagues pursue the clinic's mastermind, who turns out to be Warren Sr. The children are placed in child services. Kurt receives a reprimand, but is promoted to director of the New York office. Jane, however, is fired. Finally allowing himself to show his feelings, Kurt kisses her, only to receive news of his father's worsening condition. Jane visits Oscar and finds Mayfair there, who now realizes who orchestrated her downfall. Jane tries to explain herself, but Oscar kills Mayfair. At the hospital, Kurt's father confesses on his deathbed that he killed Taylor Shaw and buried her body under the fort. Jane struggles with Mayfair's death while Kurt replays his father's words over and over. Borden tries to reassure Kurt, insisting that his father's words were the ramblings of a dying man. Nevertheless, Kurt visits Jane, who is searching Oscar's hideout. She finds a photo of them together and remembers their leader's name, Shepard. Kurt finds evidence in her apartment suggesting she might not be Taylor Shaw. Meanwhile, the team learns of Mayfair's escape. Jane seeks help from a hacker, Anna, whom she once saved, asking her to track Oscar via his phone number. Kurt and Sarah revisit their old home. Kurt tries to convince himself that his father's confession was delusional, especially since Jane claimed to remember parts of her childhood. Anna tracks down Oscar's location and Jane heads there. Tasha and Reed trace the last call from Mayfair to a location where someone attempted to clean up blood evidence. Jane arrives at the address, but finds one of Oscar's associates, who orders her to hide in a safe house and wait. Meanwhile, Kurt and Sarah dig under the fort in their childhood home's yard, but find nothing. Patterson confirms that the blood found at the site belongs to Mayfair. Jane eventually tracks down Oscar, but he knocks her out and takes her captive. Reed, Tasha, and Patterson visit Mayfair's home and find a safe. Kurt suddenly realizes that the fort refers to their old family campsite. The agents open the safe and find a flash drive inside. Kurt arrives at the campsite where they used to have picnics. Jane regains consciousness as Oscar admits he must erase her memory again. As Kurt digs at the site, Jane pleads with Oscar to stop. Kurt uncovers a doll and Taylor's bones. Oscar confirms that Jane is not Taylor and explains the group's plans, led by Shepard. The ultimate goal was to manipulate Kurt into becoming their puppet. However, the dosage of memory-erasing drugs was miscalculated, causing Jane to start remembering. Jane realizes that Oscar, not Cade, killed the bearded man. Oscar admits their goal was to burn the country down so it could rise from the ashes. As he prepares to erase her memory again, Jane breaks free and fights him, shattering a lamp and starting a fire. In the end, Jane kills Oscar and escapes the burning shed. Before leaving, she writes a message on a car implicating Cade. Meanwhile, the agents decode Mayfair's flash drive and discover files titled Daylight, Orion, and M7G 677. When Jane returns home, Kurt is waiting for her. He shows her Taylor's doll and, furious at her deception, arrests her.